How do gingerbread men heal their wounds? Well, they just ice it. What's going on, YouTube? It is Friday, which means we're in the Hollow City inside of Cold Harbor to go over our first of two golden vendors. However, we also have a quick note here because due to the server outages and the problems that we had yesterday, they actually are giving away some free items here. So I wanted to quickly touch upon that. They say they're extending the ESO Plus free trial by 1 day to December 20th. Additionally, we will be enhancing the first 2 days of January of 2025 daily login rewards to 1,000 Seals of Endeavors, quality 5 grand experience scrolls 150%. So that's what the recompense, I guess, for the server outages are. They did a live stream where they touched upon this too. But now, let's jump into the vendor. And we got plants, you know? There are some people that stand by plants as being a good investment. And the reason they say that is because plants are notoriously super cheap. I mean, this is literally, 3,000 gold, produces a little bit of light, especially the ones like this that produce light. Personally, I think that you're going to be holding on to them for very long, and even if you do flip them for a few thousand gold more, I mean, what are you, a herbologist? You probably don't need to really worry about that, because even these ones where you're like, that's cool. How many of you want this suspicious tentacle throbbing red thing off of a long shaft inside of your home? Probably not very many of you, and the ones that do, you probably already have your house filled with a bunch of other goofy items. And before we jump into the second vendor here, which you could find in your Cyrodiil home camp, depending on which alliance you are in. Hopefully you're in the blue one, but no judgment here. Just a quick reminder to like the video and subscribe. Statistically, whenever I say to do that in a video, it gets a lot more likes and subscriptions, so here we are. But we do have some really good golden vendor items, so let us jump into them. And we start off with not one of the good ones, but I promise it gets better. So we start off with a Craglorn Overland set. So this is a resellable gold ring, so you probably could buy these for cheap on Mournhold right now. It's got a lot going on here. It's 2, 3, 4, 5. Stam recovery, increase the radius you can detect enemies by 2 meters. Stam recovery, and when you use a roll dodge, your weapon and spell damage is increased by 391 for 6 seconds. This, as a concept for a set, is fine. The biggest problem this set runs into is that 6 seconds is not as long as it feels. Sorry, ladies. And when it comes to having an actual 391 weapon and spell damage, that's not a lot too. Power creep has given us the ability to get a lot of weapon and spell damage, basically just for free. There are so many sets that have been added since Craglorn, obviously base game zone, that just give you significantly more. So this set, I would say you could build it into a perfectly fine PvP set. We'll give it like a 6.8 on our Jake scale. Next up, we actually do have a better set, and this comes from the White Gold Tower. Now, I will warn you, this set is very contentious, and we'll talk about why that is in a bit, but let's talk about just generally what it does first. So you get stam, weapon and spell damage, and then dealing damage with a light or heavy attack draws essence from the enemy that pulls near them for 5 seconds. Drawing from that pool heals you for 5,314 health and restores 4,356 stamina and increases your damage done by 10% for 10 seconds. A pool can only be created once every 10 seconds. So some people love this, some people hate this set. Let's talk about why people love it. Well, 1, you get a ton of stamina, you get some health back, and you get an unnamed buff. What is an unnamed buff? Well, let's say I gave you major sorcery. You can't have 2 major sorceries, but I can have major sorcery and a random 10% damage buff. That's why having an unnamed buff is significantly better. And then it also gives you a bunch of stamina back. So overall, I think this set's actually pretty good. But let's talk about what the detractors say. So the detractors will say 5,314 health, not a lot. That equates to less than 500 health a second, which is not very significant. And you can already restore a stamina by heavy attacking anyway. So do you really need to restore even more stamina by heavy attacking? Especially because it limits you to being into a pool. And 10% is nice, but there are plenty of 5P sets that give you more. So you have to factor in all that information. Quite a few other PvP YouTubers love this set. There are some that are indifferent towards it. So I'm just going to give it an 8.5. I think it's a great set. Some would argue fantastic. Some would argue it's probably closer to a staple. No, I don't think anybody's arguing it is a 10. But there are quite a few people that do love this set, but that's kind of the controversy around the set, especially just because it doesn't really work with ranged melee and light attacks very effectively. I think is where it also loses points. Plus, it restores stamina, so stamina only not as useful for mag characters. But that's Essence Thief. Next up from the Blessed Crucible is a dungeon set, which I somehow have managed to scroll all the way past. So it's 2, 3, and 4, pretty non-conspicuous. You get stam recovery, weapon and spell. However, when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack in melee range, you increase the damage of your light and heavy attacks against monsters by 2,110 for 10 seconds. This effect can occur once every 12 seconds. So it is a little weird. So you have to be within melee range. It's a very finicky proc, but this is actually one of, if not the, best in slot kind of go-to light and heavy attack builds. People love this set. You slap this on with Sergeant's Mail, and you're pretty much good to go when it comes to light and heavy attacking. And those are really popular for solo Overland content. I don't know if it's a staple set per se. Some would put it up there, but I think Sergeant's Mail is the staple set. This is like its, close cousin. Maybe that's a little too weird. This is like its best friend, George, who is almost a staple, but isn't quite good enough because you don't start with Noble Duelist and then build your way outwards. You start with you start with the other one, Sergeant, and then you build your way into, Noble Duelist. So I would say this is like a 9.5. This is actually a pretty decent pickup if you're just looking for a dungeon set to avoid grinding, because Overland sets, you could just buy them, right? But this one would save you farming dungeon jewelry, and rings are notoriously annoying, because even if you do get a ring, if you're not farming it on veteran, which you might struggle to find people who are farming it on veteran, you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to get the ring in blue, then I got to pay to upgrade it to purple, then to gold, versus if you just do this, you just buy 2 rings and you're done. And then if you do start farming it, well, now you've got 2 pieces knocked out of the way. I will remind you, if you are doing certain heavy attack builds, you probably are running Oakensult, but I've seen some run other sets too. So just keep in mind that you may only need 1 ring as well. That is up to you and how you want to do it. Earlier, we were talking about 300 and some odd weapon and spell damage not being that much. Here's 600, So it's 2, 3, and 4, crit chance, max mag, weapon and spell, and then 600 weapon and spell damage to your magicka damaging abilities. That's quite a lot. When we were building our 1-button build for PvP, we used War Maiden just because it is one of the highest, if not the highest, free weapon and spell magicka damaging sets that you can get. It is very finicky because it is limited in scope. So this is one of those ones where I think you could easily make a great build with it, but I don't think that you're going to be going towards the fantastic end. So great is our 8, fantastic is our 9. I would say we're pretty close to the 8. I would give this like an 8.1. I think War Maiden has stood the test of time. People are going to be weaving it into some good, great builds, but probably not any super crazy, fantastic ones right now. So that's where I would put it for right now. But it's still a good pickup. But this one you can get in the Overland, so don't buy this in gold. Even when I bought it, I think for like 80,000 gold on Xbox. So unless you're buying this with your AP to try to flip for like 70 to 80,000 gold, don't purchase this. Here's your kitty intervention because she wanted to come up and say hello on the microphone. Next up is Grundwolf from Moongrave Fane. You will probably get old by the time you finish that dungeon because it's a long one. When you deal critical damage, you restore magicka or stamina, whichever maximum is higher. You also gain 337 of the other resource. This can occur once every 5 seconds. This also suffers from the problem, which we've highlighted, and that is when there's a better alternative, and the option and way that you have to get it is not very easy. For example, Moongrave Fane is not exactly a walk down Disneyland. And if you are going to use a monster set that is restoring your resources, you're probably going to pick something like Roxas, or you're just going to run Wretched Vitality. So why would you run Grundwolf? It's okay. Some would even argue that it's good because the resource numbers are pretty decent, but you just got to give it a 7.0. Its best utilization is probably a 7.0 good IGN generic everything rating. Next up is Fang Lair. Some say the easiest hard mode to ever exist. Those people just want to get you to sacrifice your whole evening to achievement run. Thank you, David. But this one actually, as a long text, But let's process through all of it together. It gives you maximum health, easy. And then it has a wall of text. And this is one of those wall of text that if you were popcorned in middle school or high school, you would panic because there's a lot going on here. When you take damage from a nearby enemy, you summon a growing pool of desecrated bile for 8 seconds. Enemies in that bile take 365 disease damage every 1 second and afflicted with minor maim and disease status for 4 seconds, reducing their damage done by 5%, and healing received by and health recovery by 6%. This effect could occur once every 16 seconds and scales off your max health. So there is a lot going on here. There is some really niche utilization for this, but let's talk about why it's cattywampus. One, reducing their damage done by 5%. You might think that's not that helpful for PvE, and generally it isn't, but 5% can also keep you from getting waxed is hard. Minor maim and disease status, enemies are not, PvE enemies also really aren't healing themselves, so that's probably not something that's very effective. For PvP, you got to think, though, too, you can already afflict a lot of status conditions with scribing skills, so this set's kind of even fallen more down. Being able to affect people's health recovery and some of these other things, though, can be pretty decent. So that's where I would throw this. I think this is a pretty decent monster set. You really won't see it because it takes up just a really head and shoulders. It takes up such a good slot. So I would say this is perfectly fine. We'll give it like a 6.7523 just because it's like, you could definitely use this, but why would you use this over something else? But everyone, thank you guys so much again for watching. Last week we had a comedically horrible vendor. Now we actually have a pretty decent vendor. So thank you guys for sticking around to the end. I think Noble Duelist is probably the best set in there, but comment below what you think is better. Some of you might be on Team War Maiden. There's definitely a case to be made that War Maiden is actually pretty good. So let me know in the comments below. And thank you guys again for watching. As always, we're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you have to do to enter is leave a comments below. Second thing is just make sure you're subscribed. And the third thing is look for a hidden word be flashed upon the screen. If you're the first person to comment that word, you will win. Have a happy weekend. We'll be streaming either Saturday or Sunday. I'll have to pick the date still, depending on some other things I got to schedule. And I'll catch you then. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.